Hello, this is Serena, and you are currently listening to the Smores podcast. Today's topic is the Last Jedi movie review. We'll be back after this intro. So welcome back, guys. This is the first official podcast, I would like to call it, after the introductory podcast last time, where we actually delve into Star Wars discussion. And so, as we all know, The Last Jedi released last December, and I did have a chance to see it 2 times. This podcast today is my review of The Last Jedi. And so I wanted to structure this review a little bit before we get started. I would be talking about my overall thoughts and impressions, touching on the visual, and then lastly, breaking down the story. If you haven't seen The Last Jedi yet, please be warned, this is a spoiler podcast. And so after you have gone to watch The Last Jedi, you can come back and listen to this podcast and listen to my thoughts and review of this movie. So my overall first impression of this movie was that I really liked it. The humor stuck with me. I know the humor didn't stick with a lot of people, but I thought it was lighthearted humor. I really liked it. One of the humor was the Force leaf scene where Luke is trying to teach Rey to feel for the Force. Luke is trying to get Rey to reach out for the Force, and she just actually reaches out. And that scene to me was really funny. The second time that I watched this movie, before watching it the second time, I actually watched some other reviews, and I was able to pick up on things that I missed the first time, because this is actually a really long movie. So of course I couldn't catch everything the first time, and for the second time I actually watched out for details that I missed, and overall I actually appreciated the second time a lot more. The first time was more about excitement, and the second time was more about understanding the story. And so I wanted to touch on the porgs. I love the porgs. My favorite was Chewie trying to eat one of the porgs, and then also the porg infestation on the Millennium Falcon. My other favorite was the frog nuns, or the caretakers. Frog nuns are what they call it, what people call them on Tumblr. I felt like the caretakers were comic relief that really worked. When Rey destroyed the hut with a blaster, when she first Force Skypes with Kylo Ren, she ends up destroying the hut. And also when she destroys their cart with the piece of the rock that she sliced off, I thought they were perfect. They were kind of goofy looking as well, but I really liked them. And so moving on to the visuals. Octo, however you say it, I really liked the island. It was visually stunning to be able to have that drone shot going across the island, and then you can see the hut as well as the forest tree, just these beautiful sights of nature. It was really cool to see that. Canto Bight for me was interesting. The casino scenes were cool in a sense. I mean, for me, Canto Bight visually looked overwhelming. I mean, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. And for Crate, I love the red, especially the white and red contrast. Loved it. And so moving on to the story, I actually broke it down into characters. So going from what I thought were more minor characters and to more like main characters. So I wanted to start off with Admiral Holdo. So I thought she had a weak opening, actually. I didn't really question her hair or her outfit or anything like that. I actually thought she was a First Order spy with how she withheld information. But towards the end, when she did her space/hyperjump suicide mission, it was really amazing. I really liked how they resolved her arc, but I felt like the introduction to her character was kind of weak. But overall, I liked her. I think some people would say that her character wasn't really necessary. I mean, I enjoyed her character. There was some flaws in how they introduced her, but overall, I really liked her character. And then moving on to another minor character was DJ. I've read some reviews and heard about this through some podcasts, and I also agreed with the fact that at first I thought he was going to be the code breaker, like the person they were looking for wasn't the real code breaker, and then it turns out to be him, but actually it was not. He was more of a character centered around the politics of Star Wars, and I mean, I did find him interesting, and his betrayal was not unexpected, but it caught me off guard, but not by a lot. And so I thought he was an interesting character, but yeah, I think they could have done without DJ, but that's just my opinion. So moving on to Leia. So I really liked her Force scene. Some people may disagree with me. She was trying to groom Poe to become a leader. In a sense, her arc was about teaching him. And also, you can see that she's passing on the torch slowly, because towards the end, where they're in the old resistance base and Poe is giving commands for them to leave, and everybody turns to look at her and she's like, what are you looking at me for? Follow him. And so I think that was part of her importance. And of course, with Carrie Fisher's passing, we know that this is her last movie. I suppose they were originally going to have her more in the last episode of the trilogy, but I think now that they have to change the story a bit due to her passing. Overall, I really liked how Leia was portrayed, and her moment where she senses Kylo Ren just as he's about to shoot her and his hesitation. I think it really showed that she was able to portray Kylo Ren's humanity. And also, I really loved Leia and Luke's reunion. That was something that I really looked forward to. So moving on from Leia, I think I'll stay around the Resistance, so I'll go to Poe next. And so Poe, in the movie, he was described as a flyboy, and you could see in the beginning he's all about action, 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 and so it ended up being that more bombers were sacrificed in order to wipe out that dreadnought. And so you can see in the sense that he's very hot-tempered, very into action, blowing things up, as opposed to thinking about the bigger picture. And so his arc was interesting as well. I thought his arc was resolved really well, where he learned how to become a leader. Towards the end, where they're going against that cannon, he learns that they shouldn't sacrifice or shouldn't act on something that would affect them greatly. They should be thinking about the bigger picture. And so I think Poe really learned that lesson from Admiral Holdo and Leia. So I think his arc was really about growing up, really about becoming a leader, and not just a hero. So along with Poe, I want to talk about BB-8. So I really liked BB-8 because for a droid, he or she, the gender is not clear yet, but I think it's a he. BB-8, he actually comes to the rescue multiple times, saves Finn and Rose by firing at the stormtroopers towards the end, also stealing a spaceship and rescuing Finn and Rose along with DJ. BB-8 as a droid really stepped up. They really allowed the droid to have a more action-packed role, but of course I think some people would have issues with that, with BB-8 trying to kill humans when in fact they're not supposed to. But overall, I really liked BB-8 in this movie. Moving on from BB-8, I want to talk about Finn and Rose. And so as a Vietnamese, I was really excited to hear that a Vietnamese American actress was going to be one of the main characters. And then later I realized that Paige Tico was actually a Vietnamese actress, and I didn't realize until later. And it was really exciting to see Asians being represented, but also Vietnamese people being represented. And so moving on from that, I want to talk about Finn and Rose. And so we know Paige Tico is Rose's sister who sacrificed herself to destroy the dreadnought. And so I think Paige Tico, her story was really heartbreaking, and it really tugged at a lot of heartstrings. And so we can see that the sisters, they admire Finn. Finn, of course, at that moment, he only really cares about the safety of Rey as well as himself. So he's trying to flee. And so as Rose kind of has a conversation with him, she kind of realizes that he's trying to flee. And so she actually stuns him with her taser. And somehow, for plot convenience, they started debating, arguing about the First Order technology and how the ships could be tracked through hyperjump. And so that's how they came up with the plan to sneak onto the First Order ships and to try to break tracking so they can do another hyperjump. I liked their chemistry together, although I felt like Canto Bight, as much as I liked that little segue, I felt at times it was dragging on. Some people would totally skip over Canto Bight, but I don't mind watching it. It was interesting. For me, the romance was unexpected in a sense that I thought she just admired him as resistance hero, stormtrooper who defected and became part of the resistance. So I thought it was kind of underdeveloped to say that she loved him just from meeting him for less than 24 hours. I thought the romance for Finn and Rose was kind of underdeveloped, but I think it could advance. I mean, I'm not against it. So moving on to Luke. Luke Skywalker really came off as a hermit, and we did find out that he cut himself off from the Force. And I think some people would disagree with how they portrayed Luke. For me, I do not have as much of a connection to the original trilogy. I mean, I enjoyed watching the original trilogy, but I was really open to how they interpreted Star Wars moving forward. And so I thought it was really, really cool how they grounded him. They, instead of being this almighty Jedi master, he had some flaws in him. I thought it was really well done. Some people might disagree with me, but I personally liked how they portrayed Luke. Luke was really humanized in a sense that even he, the legendary Luke Skywalker, could fail. I really loved when Yoda showed up, because in Yoda's eyes, Luke was still the young Luke Skywalker, and that he still had something to teach him. Luke still had something to learn from Yoda. It shows that even though you become a master at something, you're still always learning. You never stop learning. One of my favorite scenes with Luke and Yoda was when Yoda destroys the Force tree, and I thought it was really hilarious that Yoda was just cackling, and Luke, who was so adamant on destroying the tree, actually changed his mind and wanted to save the text and the tree. And it was really cool that they incorporated a lesson in general for everybody to learn, which was you should look at failures as lessons, and that those who learn from us are bound to exceed us, and if they have exceeded us, then we've done our job. And so I thought that was really cool to have Yoda come back and teach those lessons to Luke. Another of my favorite moment was when Luke came onto the Millennium Falcon and he reunited with R2-D2. When R2-D2 showed Leia's hope message to Obi-Wan Kenobi, I thought it was really cool for them to refer to the original trilogy in that sense. Overall, I think Luke's character and his arc was really well done. His death, I thought, was really epic and grand, and he did return as Luke, the legendary Jedi, in the end. I think he'll be back as a Force ghost. I don't think he's totally done with the movies in that sense. So yeah, that's my take on Luke. Sidetracking from Luke, I want to talk about Chewie. I really liked how Chewie busted the door down to get into Luke's hut. I thought it was really cool. I found this on Tumblr where they were talking about Chewie being Rey's dad, and it was like, oh, he's taking her Octo for her Jedi training and dropping her off at First Order to meet her Force Skype boyfriend, even though he doesn't approve, and then Chewie helping her bust into Luke's hut. And so I thought that post really described Chewie's role in this story. He essentially becomes Rey's dad. I thought it was really cool how Rey is always looking for a father figure in Han, and then in Luke, it turns out she does have essentially a father figure, and it's in Chewie. So yeah, I really like Chewie in that. Moving on to Rey and Kylo. I really enjoyed Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver's performances. They had amazing chemistry, and I just really liked how they portrayed Kylo. You'd think he's like this monster in the first movie, but in the second movie, understand his motivations and his emotions, and you see somebody who's really unstable, who's really conflicted, and then you see Rey, who's trying to help him, who seems to be the only one to understand him. So I really found interesting how they did the Force bond, Force Skype, if you will, that they're just automatically connected. It was really interesting how they did the Force bond / Force Skype. They used really simple framing techniques where it's just basically eye lines, and it made them feel like even though they were different in different places, it felt like they were really talking to each other. Like I said, great chemistry. I think I read somewhere that the actors were flown in to stand off to the side in order for the actor on screen to converse with them and to have somebody to act with. And it really goes to show how those scenes were so intimate. At first, Rey doesn't understand him. She calls him a monster, murderous snake. And slowly as the Force Skype progresses, she's actually able to understand and empathize with him. I found it really interesting that after going through the mirror scene where she goes down the hole and the snapping scene, she actually seeks out Ben, or Kylo Ren, to confide in. And you can see how they progress from being not enemies, but being able to understand each other more, and then slowly starting to rely on each other for comfort. And so I think her seeking out Ben was really a scene that showed their progression in their relationship. One thing I really liked about the flashback scenes in the story was that it showed that there was truth in perspectives, showing how each individual might perceive the truth. And to them, it might be the truth, and because it's from their own point of view, to them, that's how they see the truth. But objectively, it might be be something totally different. So we can see that the truth can be perceived differently by different people, especially with how Luke said, at first he withheld information that he wanted to strike down on Ben. And then in Ben's flashback scene, you can see that he sees himself as the innocent one and that his master was the one who wanted to kill him. And then in the third scene, you see that actually it was just a fleeting moment and that he didn't actually go through with it. But in a sense that Luke turned Ben into Kylo Ren. So touching on Kylo, I wanted to say that in the scene with Snoke at the beginning where he questions Kylo for not living up to Vader's name, and so in a sense he's a child in a mask is what I think was one of the quotes. I thought that scene was really important for Kylo because now he has to move on from hiding behind a mask, trying to hide behind this goal of being Vader, and actually moving on to be something different. Moving on from that, I think my all-time favorite scene from this movie is the throne room. It was so awesome. The red, the Praetorian guards, everything about that scene was so perfect. And just the way that Kylo looks at Rey as Snoke tortures her and interrogates her for Luke's location. You can see that for him to choose Rey, for him to be able to fulfill what Vader couldn't do, to overtake the Emperor in Vader's sense, and Kylo overtook the Supreme Leader. It really moved Kylo's story past. It was like the light was calling to Kylo, and in Rey he found somebody who could understand him when his parents and his uncle couldn't, and even Snoke who couldn't understand him. Even though he thought Snoke could give him answers, he found himself leaning to Rey as his hope. I thought it was really interesting that she calls him Ben and he doesn't lash out. Because if you notice, like in The Force Awakens, when he's confronted by Han Solo, he says, "Oh, your son is dead." And then when he confronts Luke, he's also really angry. And I think, in a sense, Ben is the past that he's trying to kill. But when Rey calls him Ben, it's surprising that he doesn't lash out. So I thought that was really interesting into the romantic tension between Rey and Kylo. And of course, I want to explore this. I want to talk about this more in another podcast. But for now, I'll just leave it there. And so Rey and Kylo, really great. Love their scenes. I'm really curious to how they'll portray Supreme Leader Kylo Ren in episode 9. And the Force bond that, although Snoke said he manipulated, was still very much present in this last scene where she's closing up the door to the Falcon and he senses her and the bond is still there. So I wonder how they're gonna continue that. Overall, really love the story, although there were some parts of it that were weak. It got me thinking a lot about characters and how good and bad, light and dark. It's really no clear line because a lot of the teachings really overlapped, although they had different purposes, different goals in mind. Failure was a big theme for The Last Jedi, as a lot of people pointed out. And so I wanted to move on to the song recommendation for this podcast. So as I said before, I've been listening to the Rey Spotify playlist since the movie came out. I feel like if you have Spotify, check out the Star Wars page where they have playlists for a lot of the characters, for Rey, Kylo, Finn, so it's such and such. These songs actually really match the characters' motivations, their personalities. So the song I want to recommend from this Spotify playlist, from the Rey Spotify playlist, is Army by Ellie Goulding. I feel the lyrics of this song really fit in with how Rey fits in with the Resistance. And so yeah, I recommend that song. For Star Wars news, I wanted to direct you to this really cool article on the Star Wars website. The article is called Designing Star Wars, The Last Jedi Part 2, Creating the Caretakers. As I said before, I really liked the Caretakers, Frog Nuns as Tumblr refers to them. And this article just goes into the design process of the caretakers, and if you're interested in that article, I will have it linked. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll have it linked in the description, or you can find it on our website, starsmores.com, or you can just search the Star Wars website. That has been my The Last Jedi movie review. One question I want to ask is, what did you think of The Last Jedi? Please leave your requests down below for any topics you would like me to possibly research into or discuss about. This is Serena from Stars More signing off. May the Force be with you.